Hi, we're going to talk about a pattern called record prompt. Record prompt is one of the patterns in the Chiron Codex patterns catalogue for AI augmented software development. There's a link to the book in the description, and the book is a work in progress, so you get to support its creation, get early access to new patterns, and join a community of software engineering centaurs who are interested in learning how to augment our software engineering knowledge using AI tools by joining the Chiron Codex Patreon. The Patreon is in the last few weeks of early bird pricing, so join now to unlock full access to all content before the price goes up. Okay, it's time to dig into this pattern, so make sure you're hydrated, put on some background music, and let's get into it. Record prompt takes your interactions with the agent and turns them into a prompt that you use in future tasks. The prompt that you create encodes information that you learn during your interaction, so that in future interactions the model generates code that's closer to your expectations. For example, if you find that the model frequently uses the wrong tool to build your software, or doesn't run the tests in the way that you expect, or doesn't follow particular architectural conventions, you can write these into the prompt that you create and use that prompt in future tasks to ensure that the information is kept. It's a way of storing the memory, if you like, of the agent. Because it's in the prompt means you aren't like loading up a lot of extra files that can overwhelm the model's context. You're more likely to want to generate a system prompt than a user prompt, but let's look at the difference between those. The user prompt is what you type, assuming that you are actually typing into a UI. You might be using a pre-saved prompt, but it's the definition of the task that you give the agent. The system prompt represents effectively the kind of personality and the rules that it's like a kind of persona definition that the model takes on. So you might have a system prompt that says, in the case of a tool like GPT-EL, you're a helpful assistant that's embedded inside GNU Emacs. That's a very simple system prompt. You might have a lot more that explains the kind of work that you want the agent to do. So it might say something like, you're an expert Python developer. It might say you use these particular libraries, or you work in this style using this architectural technique. You always respond in haikus. It's a reusable prompt that defines the kind of interaction you want from the model. It's reusable across multiple tasks, typically related tasks, especially when the system prompt encodes information about the kind of work to do. But you might also have a common task that you want to repeatedly perform, taking the current state of your project into account. So you might want just a quick prompt that you can say, you always run the tests like this, please run the tests now. In that case you would create a user prompt, but where you want to define the way that a collection of related tasks are performed, you would use a system prompt. Now, depending on the tool that you use, the text that goes into that system prompt, or the file that you get the model to generate, could be conveniently deployed as a sub-agent, so as an agent definition that the model itself invokes, or as an agent skill, so as a packaged piece of functionality that the model can discover and use. Or you could just keep it as a standalone prompt file and pass it to the coding assistant many of the command line tools let you override the system prompt and replace it with a file using command line arguments. When you iterate on a problem description with a coding assistant, tell the assistant to generate a prompt file that describes how to complete the tasks, including all of the changes that you made to the way it worked or to what you did using the assistant during the interaction. So effectively capture at the end of a session the instructions that you could have given the model at the beginning of the session to make it do the things that you ended up getting it to do, but taking into account all of the twists and turns and wrong paths. You review that prompt and you use it as a basis for future interactions. So let's go and have a look at an example. Okay, so here's a situation where I've been using Claude Code and the Sonnet 4.6 model to generate some code. I know I'm usually in favour and advocate for local inference and on-device models. I still am. It's useful to compare the capabilities of the frontier models and cloud-based solutions with the local inference tools, just so we can see how well they perform. In fact, one of the other patterns in the Chiron Codex catalogue is Bake Off, where we send the same prompt to multiple models and evaluate how well they work at different tasks. Anyway, here I am using Claude Code to generate a Rails application. I won't go into the details of the task specification. I gave it a markdown file that explained a user workflow, who the user was, what their goals were, and the acceptance criteria for a user story. It took a lot of iteration to get Sonnet 4.6 to generate the correct code. It spent some time unable to find the Ruby and the Rails commands, even though both were installed. It generated code that didn't work, but it just passed. They just completed the task, and I had to say, have you written acceptance tests for the acceptance criteria, and have you written unit tests for the code? So essentially I called out error at that point and said, I expect tests and there are none. It then went back and generated the tests. So we have a couple of things that we'd like the tool to do differently. This is a great point to record prompt. So what I'm going to do now is ask it to capture all of this information in a system prompt for future tasks to write Rails code. So I'll call attention to some of the specific changes that we had to make during this interaction. So now I've moved away from getting the agent to generate code. I'm getting it to generate a prompt, and I'll tell it to store this in a markdown file. And then I'm now going to hope that Claude Code works. One of the differences between local inference and cloud-based models is that you rely on the cloud provider having good service, and I'm filming this on March the 2nd, 2026, when there was a widely reported and widespread outage of Anthropic's models. So let's just hope that this works at this point. Well, it's definitely communicating with the cloud provider, and it is reading the project files to go over some of the information that's relevant to this task. So we can see that something is working here, and we'll discover how successful it is. This is the reason that I tell you to put on the background music, is because occasionally there are periods of waiting for a model to generate its output when we work with these tools. Here we go. Claude Code also uses its own memory, which is essentially a collection of files that are named after the different folders that projects it interacts with are stored in, where it retains rules about working on those projects. That means that in this case it's generated the prompt that I explicitly asked it for, and it's also recorded in its memory for this project that this prompt exists. Now I probably will remove this and turn it into a skill, a Ruby programming skill, or possibly sub-agent, but the first thing to do is to review this prompt. So let's leave Claude now and open up File. I probably want to do it in some kind of text editor rather than the default, which would be Xcode. That's quite a small font. I'll just bump that up so you can read it. Here we go, and we're asking for full test coverage, use the correct version of Ruby, use the correct version of Rails, bundler, and so on. How to create the project, how to add the test infrastructure, and so you can see all of the information that was added to the interaction beyond the initial user prompt. My initial user prompt just said implement Ruby on Rails code to realize this user story, and linked to a markdown description of the task. It's now set up all of the information it needs to do the JavaScript testing, Ruby unit testing, browser testing, where files are stored, and so on. So record prompt is really useful for capturing that information you discover during an interaction and using it as the basis for future interactions. The full pattern description, including a different example of its use, is available in the Chiron Codex library. There's a link in the video description. Remember to check out the Chiron Codex Patreon for other content on becoming a software engineering centaur, including early access to other pattern descriptions, but also book clubs, journal reviews, exclusive videos, and more. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.